Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning?
How are you?
I am very good, thank you, Christina. Bit tired, but I'm here. And hello to everybody online as well. It's great to have you with us today. For those that don't know me, I am Pastor Kat. I'm a bit new around here. Well, I don't know about you guys, but this week has been a busy one for me. I moved house and I went back to uni for the semester, and it felt like a lot, to be honest. You might have had a week like mine, or you might have had a really breezy week, or a week of celebration, or a week of mourning or busyness. But I encourage you that whatever your week was like, that you come this morning and bring it all before God, however you are feeling today. In the very beginning of Ecclesiastes 3, it says, "There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens." So I want to say to you today that there is a time for celebrating, there is a time for mourning, there is a time for confessing, and there is a time for dreaming. And that's this time. Today, this morning in this service, is the time and place that you can bring it all before God as we worship together authentically. Let's pray together before we open today's service in song. Loving God, today we bring our stories to this place, and we wait to be held in your story. We bring our faithfulness and we bring our failures, and we ask that you shape it with grace. We bring our success and we ask that you shape it with generosity. We bring our weaknesses and we ask that you would shape them today with compassion. We bring all of our possibilities and ask that you would shape it with hope. We confess, God, that the way is sometimes hard and that we are sometimes tired, but we ask that you would speak into our tiredness with your story of grace. We confess that sometimes the way is unclear and we don't know the path, but we ask that you would speak into our wandering with your story of vision. We also confess sometimes we're tired of waiting and we just want to make things happen right here and right now. So we ask that you speak this morning into our impatience with your story of wisdom. We ask that you let our story be your story, Jesus, and that you bring us here this morning ready to authentically worship you. Amen. Well, let's stand and sing together.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. worship his holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I'll worship your holy name. Bless you, Lord. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. God, I'll worship your holy name. Sing like never before. Oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. God, I'll worship your holy name.
Well, good morning. Thank you, worship team. If you're on site, thank you, worship team, for leading us in that segment. If you're watching online, you too have many reasons to bless the Lord. And I trust that you were blessed through that worship segment as I was. So thank you, worship team. As we come to our communications time today, let me say that if you're new in joining with us, a very special welcome to you, whether you're joining with us in person or whether you're joining with us online. And if you're regular in joining with us, well, it's great nevertheless to have you joining with us as we do regularly, week by week, whether in person or online. Well, what's on in the life and ministry of the church today and into this week? Well, the children's ministry this morning, opportunity for coffee and morning tea time after the service. Most days of the week there's something going on here in this place. Playgroup tomorrow, Monday, here at Beaumaris site, playgroup at Mordialloc site on Tuesday. Wednesday night is the worship practice. Thursday of this week, Thursday afternoon, craft group. Friday evening, youth group. So there are many and varied activities going on in the life of the church across the week, but across the course of each week, you are the church as you head out into the various places and spaces where you do life. And so we encourage that as an important part of what it means to be the church and the life and ministry of the church. It's also important to focus on looking beyond ourselves. That's one of our values as a church. We look beyond ourselves. And here at BMBC, that's important to us. Last month, as we became aware of a need of one of our outreach partners, the need for Anthony and Jacqueline and family for a generator, we put the need out there to you, and there was a wonderful response to that. And I just want to share back some communication received from Anthony and Jacqueline and family expressing their thanks. This is what they said: "We were blown away. What an amazing effort from the church community. It made us feel so cared for, that you guys have our backs. What a special partnership we have. So very thankful for you all." Their flights are now booked for just in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, for mid-August, to return to the field for the next chapter of their ministry. So theirs is just one of our partnerships as we seek to look beyond ourselves. Moving into August, another focus. Another way that we can look beyond ourselves is through the Bibles for the Persecuted focus in August. And we have a little booklet that you'll have the opportunity to receive next week, which gives you a little prayer focus across 21 days, just a small prayer focus, different focus on different countries, different places across 21 days. And you also get a little do-it-yourself put-together money box, where you can set, and now it's not quite an IKEA flat pack. I don't manage too well with IKEA flat packs, but I reckon even I could put this together. But anyway, that'll be there for you to take away as well, and just perhaps put a coin, $1 or $2 a day into that. If you don't do coins anymore, a lot of people aren't doing cash anymore. That's okay. There's an opportunity to contribute online to that as well, and that goes towards Bibles for the persecuted. So I'll introduce that further next week, and we'll launch that next week for 21 days. Being a safe church is also important to us, so we want to continue to encourage you to be COVID safe, to be social distancing, to be sanitising, to be wearing masks as an extra precaution there. These are some of the main ways that you can be COVID safe. And certainly COVID is rampant at the moment again. Many people in the church are affected, and so as in our wider community. And so we want to continue to be vigilant and proactive in that space. Also, as part of being a safe church, first aid, we're in the process of updating our first aiders at BMBC. So if you have a first aid certificate, or if you need to upgrade one, and if you want to be a part of a team of first aid, contact people in the life and ministry of BMBC. Please let Denise know through the office email. We intend to get that provide a refresher in that space moving forward. Well, our worship is so much more than singing. It's so much more even than gathering with others on a Sunday. Serving in a ministry area is a part of worship. That's giving of time. Being a part of a small group, part of community in a greater way is a part of worship. Giving of our finances is a part of worship. And we encourage online giving in that space, but there is a COVID-safe box in the foyer if you're in person and feel more comfortable with that. So let me pray as we reflect on our worship and our giving. God, what a privilege it is to worship you, as we recognise afresh the wonder of who you are, the wonder of what you're like. May our response in worship be a wholehearted one. May it be an all-of-life one, with our relationships, with our time, and with our financial resources. For your glory we pray. We ask these things in and through the name of Jesus, our Saviour and our Lord. Amen. Gary's now going to come and bring today's Bible reading to us in preparation for the next part in our series from 2 Corinthians. Pastor Tom will be speaking in a few minutes on that. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, David. Today's Bible reading is from 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 7 to verse 18. And it has a subheading for this section of the Bible called The Greater Glory of the New Covenant. Now, if the ministry that brought death, which was engraved in letters on stone, came with glory, so that the Israelites could not look steadily at the face of Moses because of its glory, transitory though it was, will not the ministry of the Spirit be even more glorious? If the ministry that brought condemnation was glorious, how much more glorious is the ministry that brings righteousness? For what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. And if what was transitory came with glory, how much greater is the glory of that which lasts? Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. We are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. But their minds were made dull, for to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. This is the word of the Lord.
Well, before we dive into today's message, let's come together in a time of prayer. Loving God, Lord of love and light, shine into our lives and bring your love into our souls. Remind us of the amazing ways that you have loved us, even when we have turned our backs on you. Open our hearts to receive your loving Spirit and open our minds to receive your wisdom. Open our hands to show others your loving compassion. We thank you, God, for an encouraging church meeting last Sunday and for the 3 new members. We thank you for the provision for our church. Lord of love and light, we hold in our hearts those this morning who feel unloved. We bring them to you for you to shine your love into their lives. We hold in our minds those who are overwhelmed and are in need or are facing difficulties. We hold in our hands your loving compassion to give to them. Lord, there are those who are unwell in our community here at BMBC and beyond, that we lift to you for healing and for comfort and for clarity in their illness. We pray for Sabine, undergoing various health tests and awaiting results. We uphold Rob Jarvis and his family following the passing of his mother at 102 years old. God, meet them in their mourning today. We lift to you the many who are dealing with the ongoing effects of this latest COVID wave that we have both within our church and beyond. Lord of love and Lord of light, there are people and there are places of darkness, and we ask that you shine forth your light and your love in those places. There are people and there are places today, Lord, that have closed their minds to you. We ask that you would open them with fresh and new ideas and open their minds to you. There are people and places, Lord, that need our hands, reaching out to them with your loving compassion. We continue, Lord, to give to you the ongoing situations in countries across the world where people face injustice, war, and poverty in places like the Ukraine and Myanmar. We also uphold the challenges faced in our own country, Lord. Not simply the rising living costs, but challenges such as mental and physical illness, domestic violence, homelessness, and the ongoing efforts for reconciliation with our First Nations people. Lord, we ask that you would give our country wisdom and our leaders compassion as they make decisions, especially those that affect those. I'm going to pause our prayer for a second while we figure out that sound. Loving God, we pray for the wisdom of those in our country who make decisions, especially those decisions that impact those that are powerless and disenfranchised. We lift to you our outreach pastors today, the work of Nates as they seek to do the work of educating and empowering Indigenous leaders in our church. We bring to you Basis as they meet the needs of those in our very neighbourhood who are living through some of life's toughest circumstances. Lord, please guide their new CEO, Rose, as she finds her feet at the organisation. We ask you that BMBC could be an encouragement and support to her. We pray for the missionaries in Central Australia, the Andersons, Danny and Beth. We join them, Lord, in their prayer for deep cultural understanding and humility as they listen and learn and uplift Indigenous people. We thank you for the provision of the generator for the Jennings in Fiji, and we continue to pray for the gospel work of them, the Widows Project in Bangladesh, and the work of our playgroup ministries right here. May we and they find culturally appropriate ways to share the good news and meet people's needs with the practical love and service of our Lord Jesus. May our reaching out to them with your love and compassion shine forth your light and love. Lord, today we bring to you Pastor Tom as he brings the message. May your light shine through his words and his teaching. May you soften our hearts to hear this morning what it is that your Spirit has for us. We lift all of these things to you this morning, God, in your wonderful and powerful name. Amen.
Hello and good morning for all of you here with us in person, and good whatever time it is for you online. My name is Tom, like a couple of people have mentioned, and I get the privilege of being the Youth and Young Adults Pastor here at BMBC. And I get to continue our series on keeping it real, talking about those moments in life where it's a bit difficult, it's a bit messy and it's a bit confusing. And today we're going to talk about looking under the surface. So we're going to get a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit more uncomfortable, who knows, but hopefully we get there all together. Speaking of youth and young adults, we had a youth night on Friday, and I had one of those moments, or a reflective moment from God, which was quite nice. After I was packing up after the Friday night, something kind of silly happened. I put a whole bucket of pens down, about 50, felt like 100, but it's probably only 50, pens down, and I knocked them over, and all of them just scattered everywhere. And usually how I would react is, but luckily on Friday I had a good night. We had a good time with God, and so my attitude was a bit different, and I just found it funny. But what I'm talking about in that space is that usually there's kind of two ways we can react to different inconveniences in life, which is we can be a bit frustrated, and we'll probably still pick it up and make it right again, or we could just kind of go along with it and just find the joy or the fun in it, and we'll still pick it up and do the right thing. Essentially what I'm talking about is that we'll usually do the right thing on the outside, but we cannot necessarily feel the right thing on the inside, or a positive thing on the inside. And obviously on Friday that was quite an insignificant moment. It's not too important, but these can also impact our relationship with people. I don't know about you, but maybe if you've ever had one of these moments of where someone does something and it kind of frustrates you, you're still kind and loving on the outside, but on the inside you're a bit frustrated and you just can't quite move on. Maybe I'm the only one, but when driving, if someone tends to pull out at the wrong moment and they just stop because they freak out about what's about to happen and they're still in your way, do you ever, because I know I have at times, do you ever still let them out and wave them on, go, it's fine, you're okay, but on the inside you're like, oh, what are you doing? Why did you pull out at that moment? So what's happening there is a bit of a disconnect between my actions, although I know it's the right thing and I want to do that, and my internal environment, how God is working in me and the grace and love I'm feeling at the time. So maybe I'm the only one, but I reckon it could happen in your marriages as well. Have you ever had this where someone leaves a towel, someone unnamed, probably me, on the floor, and you go along and you pick it up and you put it back in the right place and you extend grace that way? Or what about your kids? Your kids even. You go out of your way to pick them up from hanging out with their friends because it's raining or something like that, and don't force them to take public transport, and there's not a thank you on the way home or anything like that. You're still doing the right thing. You're still doing a loving and gracious thing, but your insides are just kind of frustrated, right? And I'm convinced that these little moments, that they can really impact us. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I have those moments, it can really impact the rest of my day. I just can't move on sometimes. And I'm just stuck in that frustrated moment. Because I don't often, well, not I don't often, but usually if that's the case, I haven't brought it to God, right? And so I'm convinced that this one thing that we do, and we all often do it, can really impact the way we experience life. We experience joy. I think everyone here would want more joy in their life, right? Better relationships and all those sorts of things. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Under the surface, how are we affected by life, and how does God handle that? And thankfully, we're not the only people who've done it. God has spoken about it. And we get to read that in the Bible. And we're going to read it in 2 Corinthians, which was just read out to you. But if you want to join me there, you definitely can. 2 Corinthians is in the New Testament. A little bit of context is that it's written by an early church leader called Paul. He actually founded the church, and it's a letter to them. It is at least the second letter that we know of, as there's a first Corinthians, but we actually reckon it's probably the third letter at least, including as well a painful visit to that church. And that's kind of Paul's history at this point while writing this letter with the church. And then in this letter, we've had Paul discuss Christ writing Paul's letter of recommendation, because they were kind of wondering why Paul should be their leader, on their hearts, as he was one of the founding members. It also then goes to say that Christ or God writes the law, or what he would like us to do, on their hearts, on the responsive hearts of Jesus' followers. Which then brings him to this discussion of the way things work, or the economy of the covenants. So the way the things worked in the Old Testament, and the way things work now that Christ has come and fulfilled that old covenant. So we're going to go into verse 7, and I'm just going to break it down a little bit, and then I'll break it down a bit more about and pull out some lessons. So verse 7, now if the ministry that brought death, which was engraved in letters on stone, came with glory, so that the Israelites could not look steadily at the face of Moses because of its glory, transitionary though it was, verse 8, will not the ministry of the Spirit be even more glorious? So the ministry of the Spirit is the new covenant, or a new relationship with Christ, and the old is the old law, essentially, the more legalistic view of things. And Paul's referring to a moment where Moses descends from the mountain of Sinai to deliver the Ten Commandments to the people of Israel, and he had encountered God, and the glory of God's reflected off of his face in such a way that people couldn't even look at him properly. And that's what Paul's talking about there. Verse 9, if the ministry that brought condemnation was glorious, how much more is the ministry that brings righteousness? For what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. And that was transitionary came with glory, how much greater is the glory of that which lasts? So I want to highlight there that the old covenant, although definitely brought glory, Paul is highlighting to us essentially no longer seems to bring glory. It's kind of like if you were to look at the moon and that's all you knew, you would say it's bright in the night sky. But then if you compared it to the sun, you would say, well, that's definitely not as bright, almost to the point where everything else seems quite dark at night. And that's kind of the same sort of thing. The glory of the new covenant is so much greater that it completely outshines the old. Verse 12, therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. Paul is trying to state here we have such a hope that is permanent, that is stable, that we know is going to last, because this covenant is permanent and stable, and therefore he is bold in his actions and in his preaching and in his message in this letter. Verse 13, we are not like Moses, who would put a veil over his face to prevent Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing. Now, this was the verse that kind of got me a little bit when I first read it, because I found it kind of confusing. I thought that at first, and maybe you think the same sort of way, that Moses was trying to hide something, or in more of a deceitful way, like that connotation that he might have been hiding something in a negative way. But through a bit more reading and a bit more digging with it, it's more that Moses was trying to stop people from looking at the glory that was being reflected off of him and just focusing on Moses and actually going to look at God's glory instead. They were so wrapped up in his face that he veiled it so they could actually focus on God's real glory. And this is actually almost an analogy for this whole situation. Moses is trying to let them know that this is a temporary way of being. You coming to the law is more temporary. It's going to end at some point. And so you should just focus on the glory of God, which doesn't end, which is permanent. And essentially that is what the old covenant and the new covenant become. Verse 14, but their minds were made dull, for to this day the same veil remains. When the old covenant is read, it has not been removed, because only in Christ is it taken away. Even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. And one interesting thing I want to point out here, and we're pretty much going to finish the verses, is that this is the same sort of thing. So Moses ended up in the practice of veiling his face with the Israelites after meeting with God, and then what he would do would go back up to a meeting tent with God, and then take the veil off of his face. It's actually the same sort of thing Paul's describing, is that when we meet with God, we can take the veil off. Verse 17, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 18, and we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into his image with ever increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. So there's a few things that we probably want to pull out of here and make more applicable for our everyday life, rather than let it be all jumbled up in the confusion that can be Paul's writing at times. He's not always a clear writer. But what is clear from Paul's writing is that there is two primary ways to view and interact with our relationship with God. Right? There is the old way of the Old Covenant or the Old Testament, the law of Moses type way, the legalistic way, where it describes in detail, there's 617 laws in detail, how you should act, how you should behave, and all those sorts of things. Or there is the new covenant, which is the way of the Spirit, or it's a dynamic relationship with Jesus, and it's very, very different. It also is clear from Paul's writing here that Paul regards this newer way, this dynamic relationship with the Spirit or with God, to be greater in almost every way, both because the new way brings us life instead of death and condemnation, and it brings us righteousness, but also because God's active saving work has actually moved on from the law to Jesus culminating in the cross, Jesus' death that saves us now. So then what is essentially this new way like? If we're to start acting and living in this new way, what is it like and how is it different? Why is it kind of important, right? And Paul describes the difference as the Old Covenant as something that hides the heart, as it disengages the heart at times. And he's not saying that that's how it was intended, but that's how we kind of took it as humans, is we ended up hiding our hearts from God and just focusing on the actions, on the outside, how we interacted with our outside environment, right? And I think we all kind of realize that that's not the most important thing all the time. Because I don't know about you, like those moments I described earlier, whenever I have that moment of frustration with a car, for example, and I still do the right thing, and I still do the loving, gracious thing of, it's fine, don't worry about it, you didn't really impact my day, but internally I'm frustrated. I also have a thought afterwards of being like, yeah, that probably wasn't the attitude that God would have wanted, right? We all have that attitude or thought afterwards, whether you are a follower of Christ or not, of, probably could have handled that better, even though to the other person, their day is not impacted. And so we know that this old way is not, this outside way of living is not as important as what goes on inside as well. He also describes the old way as using their brain or using our brain, and by extension that outside kind of world, and it creates a barrier between God and us. It creates a veil between us. Paul, however, then says the only way to remove that veil, which is the problem, is to engage in the new covenant, right? The new way of living, which then removes the veil on our heart. So the question then becomes, how do we do this? And it's actually described right in there, how we do this. And we do it in very much the same way as Moses, and very much the same way that verse 18 describes. We meet with the Lord and reflect on him. We allow the internally working Spirit to change us from the inside rather than trying to make the outside look like it's perfect. This not only changes our inside environment, but actually changes the way we interact with our outside environment anyway. If your goal is to change how you act in the world and impact the world, the best way to do that is actually change your internal environment anyway. You're going to change how you are loving and gracious to other people and do the right thing anyway as a natural consequence, rather than focusing on where you've failed and how you act on the outside. So, essentially what I am saying is our actions will always follow our heart. It might not be immediate, but our actions on the outside will reveal where our heart is. And this is what Jesus says time and time again in his gospel, is that he much prefers people who try to change their heart to align with his than people who try to change their actions. And so that's kind of what we're going to be challenged with this week. If you haven't heard me speak before, always like giving a challenge or something to do at the end. And so this is what we're going to do, is we're going to create some space to meet with God, essentially to become more like Moses and meet with God. But what I mean by that is I don't mean you have to hike a mountain. It's okay. If that was the case, I would fail every time. I suck at hiking. But what I do want you to do, and this is the important part of what Moses did, is he created a meeting space, a space where he created and met with God. There was silence. There was in solitude. These are spiritual disciplines that created an environment where he could meet with God well, that he could focus on God's glory. And so that's what I'd like you to do. And there's two ways that I'm going to challenge you to potentially do that. And you can choose. You've got a choice this week. Well, you've got a choice every week, whether you follow it or not. But if you want to follow it, you've got a choice too. What I would suggest is just 5 minutes a day to do that, to create a space. Shut your bedroom door, kick everyone out of the house, whatever you need to do, where you can create some silence and solitude and focus on God. And what I would recommend is, if you've got a bit of an active brain like mine during those moments, maybe repeat a sentence again and again and again that helps you do that. So my sentence, if you want to steal it, is I am the beloved of God. And that's what I just say repeatedly until my brain gets into that space that works. You can choose pretty much anything you want as long as you're focusing on God. So 5 minutes a day, you could do that. Or if that's going to be a challenge for you, what I reckon you could do is just once this week, spend 30 minutes doing it. And essentially same sort of thing. Now, 30 minutes sounds like a long time to repeat one sentence. I guarantee you God will not just let you repeat that one sentence the entire time. He'll come and meet with you, and it will change so much for you. Even if you don't believe in God, even if you spend that 5 minutes, something will change for you. I can guarantee it. I'm truly convinced that if we were all to do this 5 minutes a day, it would change so much in your life and so much in your world. It'll change so much how you interact with your world, but also how you experience joy and love and grace to other people. So that's my challenge for this week. I pray that you take it up, because it's something I'll be doing. It's something I actually love doing too. And I would love to see how you impact your world this week. So let's close in prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for your saving grace, for your new way of living. Thank you that we don't have to just act right all the time, that we don't have to always be perfect. You know that we're not. You know that we're going to fail at that. And so you actively changed the rules. You saved us, whether we deserve it or not. You said that you love us and that you would always be beside us. And you saved us. You came and died for us and lived a perfect life so that we could still have your grace and your love in every day. We ask that you help us extend that love and grace to others as we walk this earth for you. That as we follow you, we would be loving and gracious to others. We ask that this week that you come meet us in our meeting places, in our meeting tents, wherever they be. Whether they be in a bedroom, whether they be in a closet, whether they be in our car, whatever place we dedicate to you, we ask that you come meet us. We ask that you help us create those environments, even if they're uncomfortable for us. That silence and solitude might be a really hard spot for us, but we ask that you help us journey into that space anyway this week. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for your love and how it impacts us. We ask that you help us with our walk with you this week. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Holy, holy is He. Sing a new song to Him who sits on heaven's mercy seat. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Clothed in rainbows of living color, flashes of lightning, rolls of thunder. Blessing and honor, strength and glory and power be to you, the only wise King. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. With all creation I sing praise to the King of Kings. You are my everything, and I will adore you. Filled with wonder, awestruck wonder at the mention of your name. Jesus, your name is power, breath and living water, such a marvelous mystery.
Well, thank you for joining us all today. And if you've been moved or prompted by the Spirit this morning, I invite you to come forward at the end for prayer. I promise nobody's watching, nobody's looking to see who comes forward for prayer. We just want to encourage you that we'd love to pray for you, so please come forward. Well, there is morning tea up the back in the hall today, and there is barista-made coffee for anyone who would like one. It's $3, and those proceeds go to our outreach ministry, so please stay and have a chat afterwards. Well, let me leave you with this blessing from today's reading in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. It says, "Turn to the Lord so that the veil is taken away. The Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So go today in this joyous freedom, unveiled, to be transformed into His image with ever-increasing freedom and glory." Amen.